to Leaders in the Arena. My name is Jenny Whitener, and I'm the Executive Director for the Brock Barnes Center for Leadership. Leaders in the Arena is about real stories, hard-earned insights, and practical guidance from leaders that are doing the work of leadership in the arena. The Brock Barnes Center for Leadership is focused on 4 capabilities to impact servant leadership for Christ. The first is the Institute for Student Leadership. We're excited about launching a new Leadership Fellows program here at Covenant coming up in the fall. The Institute for Innovation and Impact, we're going to talk a little bit about that today with our special guest here in a few moments. And the Institute for Executive Education, where we are working with corporations on leadership development. But most importantly for today, our Wisdom and Insight series, which brings me to our special guest, sharing wisdom today, Patrick Miles, Senior Project Lead for Innovation Services at Chick-fil-A. Welcome, Patrick.
Well, hello, Jenny. So good to see you again and engage with you, and also be able to talk to some students and others in the greater Covenant community as well.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here today. As we get started, I wanted to let our guests know that might be joining us live today. If you have questions for Patrick, if we get time for that at the end of today's session, please post those in the chat and we'll come back to that. But let's get going. Patrick, first, I want you to see if you would do the pleasure of introducing yourself. Tell the folks a little bit about your own personal leadership journey.
Sure. Hello, everybody. So again, my name is Patrick Miles. I am an innovation strategist and consultant at Chick-fil-A, and I got here after a long series of a wide variety of experiences in my professional career. Prior to Chick-fil-A, I had a 25-year career in the social or community impact space, and so 2 different university alumni associations, University of Michigan and University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, so right around the corner from Covenant. I spent 10 years in the YMCA movement, 4 years living abroad doing missions-based discipleship work in the Dominican Republic, doing some cross-cultural work with the Latino community, again in Chattanooga, around that area. And then what wrapped up my time in the community impact space was guiding some social innovation work with United Way. And I would say the red thread through all of those experiences that I was the staff person who was always asking why. Like, why are we doing this? What if we tried these different things? I was super curious, probably antagonistic to some degree, trying to always think that we can provide our impact in much richer and more meaningful ways, and asking that why question, which ultimately led me into this great methodology and arena. I found my tribe of people, if you will, called Innovators, Innovation, and sharpened my skill set, honestly, with a lot of insights and teaching and coaching from yours truly, Jenny, on the call here. She really poured into me, along with other formal education routes as well, like at Stanford D School and a couple other places I've had the opportunity to be a part of now. And so that's led me to really to Chick-fil-A, where they saw, not in the restaurant business, but what they witnessed was this systems thinking, collective impact, curious leader. And they really were at a stage in their season where they needed somebody from the outside to come and freshen up the way that they were viewing their own innovation portfolio. So kudos to Chick-fil-A that they do take risks in getting people from the outside to help them think beyond their own norms. And that was a huge benefit of bringing me in, but I've actually benefited on my end just being a part of this community and interacting with the incredible leaders that we have across Chick-fil-A, but also the network of all the other organizations that are part of our enterprise as well.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us today, Patrick. And it is fun to think back of the times. I think, what have we known each other for more than a decade? I mean, I'm not sure if I had gray hair before when we were first working together. But
well, I have a lot of children, Jenny, so gray hairs come naturally.
But I would say that I love the fact that on your introduction, you talk about this insatiable quest for why. And I do see that, having known you in multiple leadership roles that you've had over the journey when you and I've known each other, that your drive for saying there has to be a better way, your drive for using methodologies to help people innovate and find solution, it's really just world class. So are thankful to have you with us today. One of the things that I just wanted to start with is to talk about innovation as a discipline. Some people would say when I would call it the old days, that the innovation was something that a group did off kind of campus in a kind of a warehouse somewhere. But today, with the pace and scale of disruption, it's really started to be more of a constant skill set that most every leader needs to at least have the fundamentals of innovation. Talk to me about your perspective around innovation as a discipline.
It's a great question, and something that our business has had their own journey throughout that kind of definition or that scope. So Chick-fil-A we consider that we have a decentralized or hybrid innovation model. And basically what that means is we really do believe that everybody who wears this oval badge, whether they're an operator or a team member in the restaurants, or they're on staff here at the support center, which is the name of our headquarters, the support center, we are all innovators. And really that was a catalyst movement that happened in the early 2000s when our CEO, the second generation Cathy family member, Dan Cathy at the time, really, as if you, for those of you on this call who don't remember, in 2008, there was a great recession that was happening, and it was the first time in Chick-fil-A's history that they actually plateaued in some of their sales. And at the same time as that was happening, and they were kind of struggling, the leadership was seeing other companies that were still thriving in the same economic conditions, and they were asking why. And so they did a big tour of why those companies were thriving and we were not. And lo and behold, the secret ingredient is that they had a thriving culture for innovation in those organizations. And so Dan came back empowered to say, nope, instead of being reactive to the economic forces at play, no, we're going to be proactive and really try to be on the forefront of what we're up against. And that changed the game for us. So leadership chose to invest in the scope of innovation, and then actually positioned structure around it, really amped up the importance of creating a decentralized opportunity. And here's probably what's most important. They actually created a core value. So they added a core value called "We pursue what's next." The core values of Chick-fil-A are not wall art. They don't just sit there just to glance at. We're
Right.
actually measured. We're measured by these core values. And when they introduced that "We pursue its next core value," it changed the game, and it made everybody aware that, hey, you're responsible for pursuing whatever is next for our brand.
Mhm.
And that really changed the game for the culture and for the drive.
So what I'm hearing you say is that this commitment to innovation is not just one department's point of view. It's really part of your culture. It's a part of your
Right.
value system. And, the business results have been demonstrated very well in terms of if we all own it,
Right.
we're measured on it, and we're constantly looking at a better way to serve customers,
Right.
a better way to be community citizens, a better way to lead the organization. When you talk about that, there has to be some underpinning, and I know we're going to be talking about this. You have some
Mhm.
materials to share, but
Sure.
the data, and you and I have talked about this in many ways, but even formally, McKinsey, the Design Institute, all kinds of organizations have measured the impact of innovative design on business results. You're telling stories where you're saying, we see it in the restaurants, right? We see that when a restaurant embraces this, we see better results. And the data would also show from studies that organizations and communities that invest in design get better financial results. How do you guys do that? What's your method? What's your process?
That's that's right. So I think at the end of the day, Jenny, one of the most important elements for us when we are considering innovation and the scope and really driving the metrics there, it really comes back to our customers, to our target audiences that we're solving for. Right. So Chick-fil-A is known for our hospitality and service. Right. We have incredible menu of chicken sandwiches and nuggets and waffle fries, the beloved waffle fries, lots of great menu items. But at the end of the day, there are lots of people that are serving chicken sandwiches and chicken products. And what's our differentiator? It's the service and hospitality that we implement alongside that. So the white glove sort of Ritz-Carlton experience you get at a quick service restaurant. And that's what we're known for. And at the end of the day, we really want people to feel cared for through our service.
Mhm.
And as long as that is our primary metric by which we're aiming at, then what we want to do is focus all of our innovative work around how can we fulfill this aspiration to be the world's most caring company, and how can we have a positive influence on all who come in contact with Chick-fil-A. And that in and of itself lends itself to like target or customer centric problem solving. And that is again where the innovation process that we uphold comes in into play. I'll share my screen here just so you can kind of get a feel for some of the documents. And I know this is you're seeing my entire screen here, so please bear with me. There we go. So for those of you who have been in this space for a while, many of you have been you're aware of this canvas, and it's called um, the value proposition canvas. And really what it says here is that if we focus on our customers on the left, right? If our target audiences, our customers are on the left, the more we understand who they are and what their experience is, then we can offer better products and services that bring them value. And so here's what I want you to do is picture yourself, like I want to picture a lady named Susan. Susan is like a representation of our customer, one maybe segment of our customer, right? Who lives in a suburban environment, has children, takes her kids to after school, activities. And while yes, she's an avid customer of Chick-fil-A already, Chick-fil-A One member, does all that thing. If we just focus on her engagement with the Chick-fil-A experience, but coming into the restaurant, going through the drive-through, that's great. We want to understand that. But what we really want to understand is what is Susan having to deal with outside or broader
Mhm.
out, in life in general. And so if we can understand what are the economic, social, financial, relational, like what are the things that's driving importance into her world, into her sphere, then
Mhm.
perhaps we can deliver amazing services that actually can support her efforts, those goals in a meaningful way. And so the deeper understanding we have of our target audiences, the richer and more valuable services and products that we can develop. And I think that's what you've seen in our use case
Right.
is is honestly, I think Chick-fil-A has done a lot to show that there are some wonderful products and services that we've provided to our customers based on our deep level of understanding and asking why, like what and why, like what is important to you and
Mhm.
what is blocking you from of really achieving those goals that you've set before you.
Right. And just to make sure that our audience knows, a few minutes ago you had something up on the screen and it went away. So I just wanted to,
Oh no, so
if you
sorry.
still want it to be shown, just try to reshare that. But one of the things I was just going to follow up on is you'll see a lot of organizations today focus about customer centricity. And that's a pretty powerful word, and organizations that deliver on that tend to do perform better. But what I'm hearing you talk about, Patrick, goes deeper. When you were talking about that customer going through the drive-through, you were almost describing a kind of a full scope of empathy. What is
That
going
is
on?
correct.
What's going on with that customer beyond that moment when they might be driving through that restaurant and really almost intimately knowing them? And you and I have talked about the fact that that's critical for really solid,
Mhm.
bold innovation. But there are not a lot of companies who go to that level of detail in real life.
That's right. We actually have an entire customer and market insight team, and and that's segmented out even further to customers, operators who are our franchisee owner operators of our restaurants, and their team members, the red shirted staff members at our restaurants. And we have specific insights teams that are really diving into the experience of those targeted audiences. Um, Really our team members, those young people and sometimes older people that work in our restaurants who interact with our customers, they're the linchpin of the experience. And when we are identifying, for example, like maybe there's a challenge that they're facing in trying to deliver food in a accurate, meaningful way, because of some of the system or process by which our business is oriented around. Well, if it's frustrating for them, then that frustration will be carried over as a ripple effect to our customers. And so
Mhm.
what we want to do is just dive in to that frustration, understand what is the context at play, and then make strategic decisions on the right problems to solve. And so, as you're sharing, I'm sharing my screen here of our innovation process that's built off of a combination of lots of different methodologies, but design thinking, as of course, is one of them. You'll see that this, and these are not in equal time. I would say when we are launch an innovative effort on any sort of topic, this understand stage takes a long time, and that's purposeful. There's a tendency for human natures to jump into ideation, but we
Mhm.
always come back and we want to make sure that we're solving the right problems and not in making a large amount of assumptions that we think we know just because of our subject matter expertise. But we truly want to make sure that we're solving the right problems so that when we get to building solutions in this prototype stage, that they're actually desirable at the end of the day.
Mhm. Right. I mean, if you think about, I think that historic quote from Einstein, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I would spend 55 minutes, analyzing the problem and asking questions before I even started
Right.
thinking about the solution. And
That quote, Jenny, is actually in our Understand Lab here at Hatch, which is our 30,000 square foot innovation center as well. So that is
yes, and
front and center.
for our audience that might be listening in, I just have to say I had the great opportunity to be invited by Patrick down to see Hatch and the Innovation Center, and it is truly amazing. You can see the power of innovation at work in their facility and in their studio, and so it was great. The thing that I find interesting here, and I know we've got to move on because we don't have a short time today, but you're talking about when you get into this understand phase, you're going beyond reacting to a problem to really what some people would call strategic curiosity. Talk a little bit about that distinction and how at Chick-fil-A or how when you're leading teams that you really unpack this strategic curiosity capability.
Yeah. There's a couple different things I'll talk about in that sense. One is we want to make sure that we are aware of what our customers experience, our operators face, and what our team members are also dealing with in the restaurant context. All staff members at Chick-fil-A are required. It's a requirement as part of our, um, headquarters Inc. staff duties is to go on restaurant days to the restaurant. And when we say go to the restaurant, it doesn't mean, hey, we just go visit an operator, sit in their dining room, eat some food, and turn around and leave. No, we go there with our no slip shoes, our red shirts, and our black pants, and we become a team member for the day. And we go in there and we experience the high pressure during high peak lunch hours, and just the amount of pressure that is felt by those team members to fulfill those orders in an accurate manner, and by living it out, by ethnographically, right,
Mhm.
experiencing what they experience, it gives us much deeper insight into making sure that we're not only valuing those who actually drive our business, which are our operators and our team members, but we're also understanding maybe the problems that we're trying to solve by in a richer way because we're actually seeing it
Mhm.
in first person perspective.
It's
And that
powerful.
yeah, it's powerful. And that in and of itself also shows shows our operators and team members that we actually care. It's not just about us with our maybe our expertise from the corporate world driving at what we think they need to do. No, it's actually walking alongside and co-designing and co-creating alongside all of those audiences, our customers, our operators, and our team members. And we're doing it right there in the restaurant. Um,
Right.
so
It,
that's one.
It reminds me of Stanford's D School program where they'll say,
That's right.
see one, do one, be one, or whatever,
That's
like
right.
observe, immerse, engage, where you're really fully being the customer or fully being the operator or the service member. And
That's right.
it's not just kind of looking at data, you're on site, really gathering perspective. And that is so powerful.
Right. And granted, if I'm sitting there breading chicken at a Chick-fil-A and that hour that you just happen to be happen to be a customer, I'll apologize up front because I'm probably not the greatest, chicken breader. When you see the amount of work that the back of house, which is our kitchen staff, do in those high peak hours, and they produce such high quality output in such a fast-paced environment. It's amazing. I don't know how they do it, but it's through time and it's through the constant repetition and iterations, and honestly, it's also through the care by which their operators and the restaurant leaders pour back into them, giving them the space and time to perfect their own trade, which is amazing. Um, but being there and experiencing what they experience, again, it just gives me a much richer, deeper insights. Now, going beyond that, we want to constantly inform and inspire our staff. And we're human beings, so we have a tendency, everybody does, to try to get into our repetitious, habitual sort of way of working and thinking. And so our team is constantly trying to spark new ways of considering or thinking or being curious, to what
Mhm.
you asked earlier. And so we're utilizing different tools, such as Lego Serious Play.
Wow.
For those of you, so you can use Lego to really make some strategic, serious decisions and scoping out insights. So you might come to Chick-fil-A, our support center. You'll see staff members, even at the leadership level, interacting with Lego models in order just to see what could be possible in the future. Or we just had an internal innovation conference, and it was all centered around sort of exploration. If you think about Lewis and Clark,
Mm.
right, and how they were charted to go find a pathway to the Pacific Ocean, and they were canoe explorers. That was their bread and butter. But lo and behold, they found and discovered that there was this big obstacle in the way called the Rocky Mountains. And they had to change the perspective of who they were and how they were going to go and explore to get at that destination. Well,
Mhm.
Chick-fil-A has our own destinations in mind. Like, we have strategic goals that are set before us, and we're aiming towards that. And really, we need to inspire and continue to be curious around not just assuming the old ways will get us to that destination, because the landscape is constantly changing, and we need to make sure that we're adapting, we're modifying, and we're also maybe reinventing our own identity of how
Mhm.
we're going to explore the pathways in front of us to actually get to that shared destination, right?
Right. I mean, it's so powerful. Recently, one of the books that I've had fun reading this past year has been Think Again by Adam
Oh,
Grant.
Adam and Grant, yeah,
From the
great.
Wharton School. And, one of the things he challenged us to do in his book, Think Again, is to think like a scientist and constantly be curious and explore and uncover and analyze and then come up with a
That's right.
hypothesis, right? And his other big concept that's in alignment with what you're talking about is this concept of confident humility. And so often, I think leaders who get into a pace of leading often forget that they don't know everything, how far they
That's
are
right.
at the support center or at corporate headquarters from the actual customer experience. And how do they stay confident but humble enough
That's right.
really get into the shoes of that service operator, to get into the shoes of the individual that you're serving and really understand from an empathy standpoint what's happening with it. And that becomes the fuel, right? That becomes the inspiration
That's
for
right.
great innovation. So, talk to me about how you're building capability. I know that you've talked about the methodology in Hatch, but are there other things that you're doing at Chick-fil-A to build capability of innovation for the organization?
Yes, we do this in different scopes. We have some formal education pathways, if you will, courses, both on demand, but we also have our own internal innovation practitioner certification that is in scope of our environment, right? We want to equip staff members with the ability to actually innovate succinctly in our context. And so We actually have a 12-week innovation cohort that staff members go through, and it's really rich and powerful. And they do a deep dive on our innovation process, but they also go beyond that around the mindsets and habits that you have to put on, right? I don't want to touch on that for just a moment because there's this word called creativity, right? And there are a lot of people when we talk about creatives, people get turned off because they're like, I'm not creative. And if you take some of those assessments, maybe you're the type of person who kind of falls into the implementer, optimizer sort of area. And you might think to yourself, I'm not a creative. I'm not coming up with crazy ideas. But I would beg to differ that actually you are very much a creative, but your creativity is just flavored a little bit differently. To me, creativity is when you bring your unique gifts, talents, and honestly, your experiences you've had in your journey, and think about that as an important ingredient. And if you bring that ingredient that is you alongside other ingredients in a scope and in a specific season of time, and you mash those ingredients together, you're going to walk away with an incredible recipe that no one would ever have been able to enjoy if they didn't have that ingredient as part of it. And
Right.
so, right, so even in the innovation process, right, the innovation takes implementation, right? We're not going to go launch the next state of the art drive-through experience without having those types of people that can take maybe the ideas and put meat to them to ensure that we can operate them at scale across all of our restaurants. It
Hmm.
takes an implementer to be able to do that. But that implementer also has unique little ways of thinking that they can contribute or yes and in any of our ideation methods as well. Because there may be something that they're going to unlock that we're just not considering when we're maybe doing a big huge brainstorm session or something like that. So it's important that we involve everybody into that process. So we have an open, sort of a semi-open innovation methodology where we're capturing ideas from all over the business. Again, from
Right.
customers, from operators. Um, there's I think a study that's out there that says, for every really wonderful, good quality idea that turns into an impactful solution, it takes about 1,000, or that's probably even shortchanging, and maybe it's even 2,000, meh ideas that come in. So that just tells you we need to collect more and more and more ideas in order to really get that significant output.
Yeah, what's a great that quote that says to have a really great idea, you had to have lots of ideas, and I know that
Right.
when you and I have gone through certification together, we'll put teams against each other and say, well, how many ideas did you come up with? And that team that comes up with four, you kind of want to send them back to the well and say, try
That's
again.
right. That's
Like
right.
the other team might have come up with 55 or, like 105. And so it is true. I mean, that we have to stretch ourselves. But one of the things I find fascinating is that you've got this value system on innovation. You've talked about the fact that you have facility, right? You have Hatch, you have a method, but then
That's
also
right.
you're investing in this training, the certification, and the tools. So it's not just, go back to your point earlier, a slogan on a wall. You're really investing in building the skill sets to really be fantastic and use innovation as a strategic capability for the company. It shows in the delivery of your services to your customers and it shows with your employees. So hats off to you guys. Fantastic
Well, I appreciate that.
there. Yeah, one of the things that you also talked about was around the kind of the value system. So let's talk a little bit more about that and talk about experimentation. Because I know with every great innovator, you've got a method, right? You've got the empathy we talked about earlier, ideation, unlocking that with collaboration.
That's right.
It's kind of team sport with bringing different people's ideas together. But then to evolve those innovative ideas, we have to really embrace experimentation. Talk about that.
Yes. So the reason why we have our innovation center, which is called Hatch, kind of a little fun play on words there, where ideas are hatched and incubated. But Hatch, part of our warehouse here, this innovation center, is that we have an entire simulation or live lab. And in that live lab, which is about 15 to 20,000 of our 30,000 square foot facility, it is where we build prototypes in low fidelity instances. So imagine we're considering maybe the restaurant design of 2030. And if we're thinking of that new restaurant design layout, we're going to build it at scale all out of foam. So imagine walking into a big warehouse and you're literally walking into a foam building. And we do that, and it's amazing and it's inspirational, but it also provides a high level visibility of, oh, I can actually see what you're talking about. I can experience what that might be like. And it provides sort of like a backdrop for people to make believe. And then we literally do. We'll invite customers and sometimes operators and team members, and we'll give them roles to play, and we'll have them interact into that restaurant design concept. But we're using foam in order to experiment very quickly on whether or not that this is meeting their desires. Are there any tweaks that need to be made? Because at the end of the day, foam is not expensive. If we were going to go create a real restaurant and then have to modify that restaurant, it would be super expensive and time consuming. But doing it quickly using low fidelity materials, we can go very, very, very quickly. And it has actually provided lots of wonderful insights to ensure that we're solving the right problems in the right ways. So
Mhm.
when we do the early prototypes, we often will discover that, oh my goodness, no, we're designing this in the wrong way. This is not the right way to meet the desirability or the most important metrics that we're aiming at. So let's quickly modify that and then produce another simulation, another prototype, and get people interacting with it again. And it just helps us to, maybe at the front part, it's taking a little time, but then it'll actually accelerate the work of building out that prototype long term.
Right. And I know that, this is where some of the famous quotes on fail early to succeed faster come in, is in these early stages of experimentation. And what I love about what you're saying is that you've got
That's right.
dedicated time, dedicated resources, and you're equipping people to actually go through that experimentation process, to iterate, to don't fall in love with your idea too quickly, right? What you want to do is learn, experiment to
That's right.
learn and to evolve those early concepts that you come up with. We could spend all day on this because
Easily.
I know that this is a passion you and I share. Thank you so much, Patrick. I know we've talked about maybe getting you up to Covenant maybe in the early part of the fall. I would love to do that. Maybe even we could get a team of students down to come and see Hatch. That would be really fun too. But thank you so much for all of your wisdom today, sharing about innovation at Chick-fil-A. Here at Covenant College, we're focused on equipping servant leaders to faithfully build institutions and communities in Christ's work of making all things new. And you've shared an amazing toolkit with us today about how to do that. So thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Jenny, for having me.
All right. Thank you. We'll see you soon. Good luck now. Bye bye.
God bless.